Alrighty, folks. I think it was a couple weeks ago. Casey shared with us that her parents have moved to Mexico after they retired, and a couple of you asked, "Hey, tell us more." So
Yeah,
we're going to learn more about that. So, Casey, what's going on? Tell us about your parents going to Mexico to retire.
I'll tell you. First of all, it's been a couple years now, and I'm less scared. But I was like not for it. Okay, it's not like they moved to like Cabo or somewhere cool. They moved 6 hours south of the border, south of California. We're from Orange, lived in Orange County. Parents Inland Empire. They moved 6 hours south of the border to a farming town called El Salcarito outside of San Quintin, where there's a lot of strawberry fields. The city, I don't even think it's a city. It's so small. There's like 65 people that live there.
Oh my
Many of
goodness.
them are American retirees. In Mexico, and I believe unless you're a citizen, you can't own the land. You can lease the land. So my parents have a very long land lease, and they're like, "We'll be dead when that's over." So they rent the land for like a year or 5 years at a time, something like that. And they bought a house on the beach for $40,000 cash. $40,000. It's a single story. It's got a lot of land. They've got ocean views. And some of their neighbors have all those cool toys, and they'll go up. My dad, he catches fish for the village. So my dad and his friend, I think it's Greg or something like that, they go out and they catch fish and they bring them to the whole village, and they keep the best fish. But they love the beach. They love Mexico. When I was little, I grew up going camping in Mexico, Ensenada and stuff like that when I was real little. Since then, though, it's gotten, because I'm from SoCal, it's gotten very dangerous. And, the drug smuggling and stuffing American bodies with drugs and sending them back for funerals and cutting off girls' fingers and sending them back to their parents for
Wow.
ransom.
Sheesh.
So, oh yeah, they do not talk about that stuff in the news. Not even in California news, not even SoCal
Mm,
news. They don't talk about the
wow.
cartels and all of that. My
Okay.
dad told me that he had put he has two wallets when he drives down there. My sister still lives in California, so they go about every month. One, his real wallet, he puts in the door panel of his car. Then he has a fake wallet with a little bit of money and like pretend credit card. So if he gets stopped by the bad guys, the cartel or whoever, and they want his money and his wallet, he hands him. I'm like, I go, we will never come visit you down there, just so you know.
Yes.
My kids
Yeah.
don't need a dead mother.
Yeah.
Um, but they moved down there because they weren't very great savers. They
Mm,
spent all the money that they had. And my mom was a nurse. My dad was an entrepreneur his whole life, never really quite made the success that he always dreamed of himself, which is sometimes what holds me back, right? Because I'm like, ooh, what if I don't make it,
mm.
like my dad. Hope he doesn't watch this. But my mom was a nurse, and she was the one that made all the money her whole life, but still wasn't enough to retire on.
Mm.
And so they sold their house a couple years ago in California, in SoCal, in the Inland Empire, and they took that equity, they put it in their bank account, and they bought a house in Mexico.
Mm.
And gosh, it's so cheap to live down there. They don't have an address. I can't mail them stuff. All they have is coordinates to get there if I were to go, which I will
Coordinates.
never go.
Wow.
Coordinates. That's right. No mailbox. No, no. Like they have a septic tank and no water, so they have to have water trucked in and put in a big container on top of their house.
Okay. I've seen those. Wow.
Yeah. So it's crazy, and
Okay.
there's no airport nearby. It's far. It's far from
So,
dirt roads.
I guess I got a couple questions about it. Like, do you think it was your parents' goal? I don't know, let's call it the last 20 years to retire in Mexico. Like they knew that, or did they sell their house and are like, well, shoot, where can we live? And in Mexico was the answer. Where was that?
Yeah. I don't think that they really, personally, I don't know. I don't think that they really thought about it. They lived
Mm,
so day to day. And it's my dad's dream. He was always going to make it, whatever. And,
mhm.
he didn't really ever make it with making tons of money. And they just spent everything that they had. And, I remember this when I was 18, and it kind of like, I don't know. When I was 18, my dad said, Casey, when we're older, you're going to have to take care of us. And I'm
Oh,
like, what? I'm like, Dad. I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna have enough money to take care of myself. Like, don't count on me. I'm barely like 18, you know? So
Yeah.
like I remember he said that, and part of me kind of thinks that they always felt like we would pay for them, or I don't know. Now my sister makes a lot of money. And
Mm,
she has even offered to pay for them to stay in California, but they didn't want to take her money, you know? So their only thing that they could do was move somewhere else that they could afford, you know, and live off Social Security, which
mm.
is what they do. And, you know, my address is their address.
So they do live off Social Security. So they have the little bit of money they got from selling the house that's, in a savings account somewhere, and then they're living on Social Security to
Yep.
pay the bills. Did they speak the language? Like, were they Spanish speaking, or did they have to figure that out as well?
But you know, living in Southern California, you know some Spanish. Like you could definitely understand what people are saying. Like I can understand if you talk slow, you know, despacio, you know, and then like I'll get it. And my mom has been doing Duolingo for years, and she can definitely speak some Spanish now.
Mhm.
But most people are Spanish speakers when you go to the stores. But
Yeah.
they're really nice, and they're picking up the
Okay.
language. And all most of the people in the village that they live in, the 63 or 65 people, are Americans.
So again, you're saying it's a village, strawberry farms, but it's also on the beach or
Yeah,
ocean or whatever. Wow.
it's on the beach in Baja, California.
Okay. All right. And then health insurance. Do you have any idea how that's handled? I have no idea.
So like Medicare.
Okay, Medicare. Okay.
Yep.
All right. All
And
right.
I know that like they go to some dentist down there in Mexico because it's cheaper and they do a good job versus driving all the way up. But for their regular health care needs, they'll drive up to my sister's house in Orange County and they'll go to their doctor there.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on your parents down in Mexico?
My only thoughts are I don't ever want to be in that position to where I have to move out of country because I took too many risks or I was too overconfident and I didn't have my ducks in a row. So that sort of thing scares me. Like, I
Mm.
mean, I don't want to be like that. I love them and they're happy. They love to fish and they love
Yeah,
living that
they
minimalist
found their thing.
lifestyle where you got to put your toilet paper in the trash can. But I mean, I can't, I don't want to be like that. So you have to make smart decisions and the right moves while you're able to, and make sure that you and your family and your kids and your parents, if need be, are set up to pay for retirement in case something happens. Like if I were to die tomorrow, we'd have rental income. If Blake were to die tomorrow, we'd have rental income. You know, at
Yeah,
least we'd have that. We've got assets. We have properties that we could cash out if we had to pay for stuff. You know, my
yeah.
parents didn't have assets.
Oh,
They
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 had
only they
one.
had their
They
house,
had
and
one.
which is why I say people say your primary residence is not an asset. BS, it's not an asset. Yes, it is. So yeah, you got to pay to fix it up your whole life, but guess what? You pay to fix up your rentals too. So what's the difference? Because guess
Yeah.
what? My parents had several $100,000 that they got to cash out from their house. And if they didn't have that, where would they be now?
There
You
you go.
know,
Well, Casey, thank you very much for addressing the questions. I appreciate you. The audience does. Where can they find you?
you can find me every day on Instagram at Brick by Brick Wealth and my website at brickbybrickwealth.com and YouTube as well.
Thank you so much.